Good morning. All right. So the last few weeks I've been cracking jokes about how I never wear my glasses. I don't wear them when I'm up here because I don't need them to read. I only need them to see far away. And so this morning I wanted to try and make an example out of these because sometimes our life gets out of focus. And sometimes we start focusing on things that distort the way that we see life, and it's as if someone is actually taking the glasses off and we're not really able to see clearly anymore. And I'm going to leave them off because if I leave them on, I won't be able to read what's on the screen here below me. The first slide is called The Power of the Mind. I don't deal in psychology much, if at all, but I do know that our minds are very, very powerful. And there are things that happen to us in our lives that will literally wire our brains to see patterns of activity that may or may not actually be there. And we will have patterns of response depending on what's happened to us, so that when we see things happening, we will perceive them in that way, and it's our mind. The power of our mind. And with our minds, we can create beauty. Now, I don't mean you can create this landscape, maybe in a painting, but you can't actually go out and create this landscape that I've taken. But we can, with our minds, we can create things of beauty. Some art that you'll probably recognize as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. When I think of art and I think of beauty, this is one of the very first things that comes to my head. I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of Monday Lisa. She looks a lot like Mona Lisa, but her hair's a mess. It's a Monday Lisa. Mona Lisa, this work of art, and it's so beautiful, and it came from the mind of Leonardo da Vinci. All from his mind. And there's in the art world, there's huge debate about who the person was he was painting and why the smirk, why the smile, right? But when you think about beauty, this is something that with your mind, you can create. Or Van Gogh's Starry Night. How many of you were able to go to the Van Gogh, the exhibition? I didn't get to go, but it's pretty cool though, right? All from his mind. He uses mind to create beauty in life through painting. One of my favorites is Picasso, because he just saw things differently. You may or may not be able to perceive this, but this is called, he had a couple of different paintings called The Three Musicians. This is one of those two paintings he had called The Three Musicians. And he just saw the world differently. And he's a fairly recent painter, unlike Da Vinci and Van Gogh. He's a fairly recent painter. And he was asked by someone who was more of a realist in how they perceive the world. They said, why don't you paint things that actually look like what you're painting? Right? Like Kathy's like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense to me. Why don't you paint things that actually look like the thing you're painting? Where I can look at an apple in real life and look at a painting of an apple you did and say, hey, look, it looks just like an apple. Why don't you do that? And he said, do you have a photo of your wife? He said, yes. He pointed it out. He goes, see, she looks just like me, little wallet size. He goes, she seems awfully small. Because he saw the world different. He said, that's not a picture of your wife. Your wife is much bigger than that. With our minds, we can create beauty, and with our minds, we can create ugliness. Right? The ugliness of war. And we'll use our minds to create things that are massively, massively destructive. We've invented ways of killing thousands and tens of thousands of people with just one drop of one bomb. In our minds, we were able to create systems of slavery and oppression driven by greed with our minds. Because there's not a single thing that you have ever done that didn't originate in your mind. That is where it starts. It starts in your mind. And if you want to make your world a better place, if you want to make your family a better place, if you want to make yourself a better human being, it's going to start in your mind first. And sometimes it'll start with your actions to get your mind to jump on board. It's called the fake it till you make it approach. But even that starts in your mind because you have to make a decision to act a certain way so that your brain will start to agree with the new action that you are taking. It's called forming a routine. It's what you have to do if you've ever decided the first of the year you're going to go to the gym and you're going to work out and you're going to get healthy this year for sure, yes. Your brain will not jump on board first day and say, I am so into this. This is great. I love it. Your brain will have to make a decision to do it first so your body will start to agree with your brain and they'll come into unity and there'll be an alignment there. It starts in your mind. Jesus says it like this. Can I tell you guys a little secret before I continue? If you've been paying attention for the past couple of months, you'll notice I've been using the same passages of Scripture over and over and over again. Matthew, Luke, Romans, Philippians. Over and over and over. Because this is something I hold very dear. It starts in your mind. Think about the narrow gate passages that we talked about. That starts in your mind. Where you decide you're going to live the way of the narrow gate, you're going to love everyone, always. That starts as a decision in your mind. Everything we do starts in our mind, what the Bible will often call your heart. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, of course this is from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, or as Luke calls it, the Sermon on the Plain. You have heard it said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. True enough. I think we're all on board here. Do not murder. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Because murder doesn't start, typically, unless someone's had some sort of psychotic episode, murder doesn't generally start with you wake up one day and decide I'm going to kill someone, right? Typically, it starts because you have been brewing hatred within your mind, within your heart, and that hatred starts to overflow into your actions until you kill someone. That's where murder starts. But it starts in your mind first. Hate starts in your mind. Despising someone starts in your mind. Judging someone starts in your mind. It all starts there. Anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, which is just fool, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. And what Jesus is addressing is the people who say, yeah, well, I never murdered anyone. Right? I'm a good person. I've never murdered anyone or stole from somebody. Right? We'll say things like that. But Jesus is saying, no, it goes much deeper than that. It goes into the things that are happening on the inside of you, and the inside of your person. Because murder doesn't start with murder. Murder starts with hate. Robbing someone doesn't start with, I want to rob someone. It usually starts with, they have something they don't deserve that I do. He'll go on to say this. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. So you will have husbands and maybe wives, but this is the ancient world. We're really talking about men here. That would say, I'm a pretty good husband. I never committed adultery. But Jesus said, yeah, but you thought about it. Purposefully thought about it. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Because it starts here. And then it gets expressed. Luke chapter 6, part of the same sermon. Luke words it differently. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. That makes sense enough. Unless Picasso's painting it, it's going to look like an apple tree, and it's going to give you apples. Or a pear tree is going to give you pears. You know a tree by the fruit it gives you. And Jesus says that's how we know the inside of a person, is by what comes out on the outside of that person. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Now, for you grammar nerds out there, please forgive the translation's ending of sentence with a preposition. I know it was bothering you because it was bothering me. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And so when we speak words of hate, it's because we've been building up hate on the inside. And we bring things of evil into the world, it's because we've been storing up evil on the inside. When we refuse to live the life of the narrow gate, the life where we do unto others as we'd have them do unto us, it's because we've been storing up another way of life on the inside. And we've been focusing on the wrong thing. You see, when I read the gospel, it makes things clear. How things are supposed to look, how things are supposed to be. I'm supposed to be able to see it and live it. But so often we store up the wrong things in our hearts. And then we wonder why we are the way we are. When I was a kid, we would oversimplify this. We say, so therefore, no watching action movies. Just all the violence. Or don't listen to that music because of the words and the music. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I think it runs way, way deeper than that. I think what Jesus is saying is if we're going to be Christians, not if we're going to confess Christianity as our preferred religion, but if we're going to be Christians, we're going to have to start filling ourselves up with this new way of life. Because we have the benefit of a couple thousand years of Christian tradition being passed down to us where the things that Jesus says don't seem quite as radical, but Jesus had a radical message for these people. And we'll find it radical too if we actually start to apply it. But instead we seem to regurgitate the pattern of this world and sprinkle a little Jesus on it. Paul to the church in Rome. Now I will summarize a bit again what's happening at the church in Rome. Jewish and Gentile believers in Jesus have come together. They're worshiping what you could call the belly of the beast. They're worshiping there in Rome. A Roman emperor comes along and he kicks all the Jews out of Rome. Jewish people who believed in Jesus and Jewish people who didn't believe in Jesus, they're all out. If you were a Gentile, you're a Roman, you're allowed to stay. So for about 5 years, Gentiles ruled the day. They got to create church however they thought church should be. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if half of us had never been to church before, never had any religious upbringing, started coming to church, we're here for a couple years, maybe, and then the rest of us got kicked out. And 5 years later, we're allowed to come back. And the half of you that stayed, you're doing things way different than we think you should do them. Your songs are different, your music's different, the pews are different, classes are different, everything's different. And we show up and we say, what is going on here at our church? This isn't church at all. And there's arguing and there's infighting. And Paul spends 12 chapters trying to convince them all that they're the same. That no one's better or worse than anybody else. And he says these words, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy," mercy to Jewish people, mercy to Gentile people, in view of God's mercy, "to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." If you're going to be a Christian, it doesn't matter if you have a Jewish background or a Gentile background, you're both dedicated to living in the way of Jesus. And to do that, you're going to have to sacrifice your opinions and your thoughts every day. And then your worship is acceptable. Jesus says something very similar to a Samaritan woman at a well, and she says, "Are we supposed to worship on your mountain or our mountain? Which one's the right mountain?" And Jesus says, "Actually, neither mountain." That part doesn't really matter. There's going to come a day when people worship God in spirit and truth. Well, how are we going to worship God in spirit and truth? By being a living sacrifice, giving up our rights because we love the people around us. Truly, deeply, genuinely love the people around us. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you're going to live the way Paul tells them to live in the first 11 chapters, then you're going to have to renew your mind to do it. You're going to have to change the way you think to do it. Because up until that point, they'd been using their minds not to create beauty in the lives of others, but to create ugliness in the lives of others. And he says, if you're going to live this life of Jesus, this way of Jesus, you're going to have to renew your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. He says, you'll never be living the will of God for your life until you've renewed your mind. To the church in Philippi, he says this, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things." Because if you want to change your world, and by your world I mean your world. I don't mean your world, everything. You're not going to be able to change everything. But if you want to change your world where you are, you're going to have to change your thoughts. You're going to have to change your thoughts. If you want to create beauty, you're going to have to change your thoughts. Because it all starts in the mind. It all starts in the mind. And we talked about this last week. So many times we're wanting our happiness to depend on our circumstance. But more often than not, the thing that needs to change is our mind. How we think about things. If you want to change your life, you're going to have to change your mind. The thing that you cannot do, and I know Perry came up because he thought, this is his last slide. He's almost done. Sorry, this last slide is a doozy. What you cannot do is process a negative thought, like a do not do thought, in order to not do that thing. Now you might be wondering, what does he mean by that? I will give you an example and you're all going to fail and I'm going to win. It's going to be great. Do not think about purple elephants. You know what you all just did? Purple elephant. Because you can't deal with the do not do. Because the do not, you will process it and you will imagine it, even though I just told you not to. So what Paul doesn't say is, do not think about the negative, do not think about the dark, do not think about the... He doesn't say all that. Don't think about what's disrespectful, don't think about what's not pure, because the moment he says don't do it, you'll do it. The only way to change your thought is to not try and to not think about negative things. The only way to not think about negative things is to think about positive things. It's the only way to do it. You can't deal with a negative command. Not when it comes to thought. You can only deal with a positive command. And the positive command is what Paul just said in the slide before. Whatever is true, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if something is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things, because you will be filling your mind with these things. And as you fill your mind with these things which you filled your heart with, that's what you'll fill your hands with. And so if you want to change your world, if you want to change your family, if you want to change the circumstances at your work, if you want to be happy, if you want to be content in want or having plenty, you've got to start with your mind. But it's so easy to take those glasses off and lose focus. Because it's easy to focus on the negative, it just is. It's easy to focus on it and start to complain about it. But if you want to get something done, you have to have a positive response to the negative circumstance. Adding more negative to the negative is not going to get you out. You've got to decide who you're going to be when the situation makes it really hard to be that person. You're going to have to decide that you are going to be a loving person no matter what. No matter what your spouse says, no matter what your children say, no matter what your boss says to you, you are going to be a loving person no matter what, because you have filled your mind with the positive. And so out comes the positive in your hands, in your actions, in your words. And you can't do that if you're focused on the negative. Don't complain, don't complain, don't complain, don't complain. You're going to complain. Don't argue, don't argue. No. Give yourself something positive to do so that you'll have something positive to actually work towards. Because you can't deal with the negative. You ever notice when you're driving and you see cop lights on and a car's supposed to alongside the road, and you're like, okay, I don't want to hit them. I don't want to, so you'll slow down. But if you look at them, you don't want to hit them, but you will go towards them. Because you can't deal with the negative. Don't hit them, don't hit them, don't hit them. That's a lot of people get killed on bicycles. Because someone driving a car says, I don't want to hit the person on the bicycle, I don't want to hit them. And they hit them. I don't want to hit that tree. You're going to hit that tree. Stop focusing on what you don't want to do and start focusing in on what you do want to do. We've lived lives that are out of focus, and then we wonder why we can't respond in a Christ-like way. We're in a difficult situation. It's because we have put the wrong glasses on. So if you want to change your world, change your thoughts. Change your thoughts. All right, Perry, I'm done. Amen? Amen. You guys looking good, by the way.